Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about the so-called peace talks that were supposed to be held today and tomorrow in Islamabad. Today is it's already 21st in Pakistan, and Iran, 21st of April. The ceasefire is supposed to end on Tuesday. And so, if there is no extension, perhaps a unilateral extension from Donald Trump of the ceasefire, or if there is no beginning of negotiations tomorrow, then, as Donald Trump has said to PBS in an interview, then lots of bombs are going to fall. So Donald Trump is still threatening to attack Iran if there is no deal by tomorrow. So the question really is as to what is happening and what is President Trump trying to achieve. He seems to be tied up in knots, constantly doing things which are contrary to his own interests. So, for example, he decided to have and agreed with Iran to have a 2 week ceasefire, and that would be until April 21st. This was done after some really hectic negotiations by Pakistan's Prime Minister and their Field Marshal Asim Munir, and also the role that Egypt, Turkey, and to some extent Oman and Qatar also played in the initial ceasefire. And then subsequently, Pakistan has been taking a lead in these negotiations. So, but I mean, once a ceasefire was agreed, the first 2, 3 days were wasted because Israel would not accept the ceasefire, and Donald Trump could not control, and he still cannot control Israel. And so Israel started bombing Lebanon. In fact, the day after the ceasefire was announced, the biggest and the worst case of bombing and casualties in Lebanon at the hands of Israelis happened after the so-called ceasefire happened. So the first 2, 3 days are wasted in first the Americans saying that Lebanon, agreeing that Lebanon was part of the ceasefire, then disagreeing, and then ultimately initiating negotiations with Lebanon and Israel. And now the violence has dissipated to some extent, but Israel continues to violate even that ceasefire. When Israel is involved in any ceasefire, you should take it for granted that they will not uphold. Israel will not uphold any of the promises that it makes, and because it enjoys some kind of an incredible control over American foreign policy, about American resources, over American weapons, over American money, over American diplomacy, they always get away because the United States is the most powerful country in the world, and no set of nations are willing to take on the United States on behalf of either Palestine or Gaza or Iran. So in that sense, that ceasefire, a couple of days are wasted, and then of course there was progress made when J.D. Vance meets with the Iranian delegation. So we thought that there would be some definite progress because there were good vibes at the ceasefire negotiation, at the peace talks in Islamabad. And both sides came out saying that there was agreement on several issues. There are only 3 issues that need to be resolved. One was what to do with the uranium enrichment program of Iran, which the United States wants it to be completely shut down. The second was the issue of the control over the Strait of Hormuz. And third one, and depending on who the Iranians pointed to essentially ending of all sanctions and payments of the retributions, essentially reparations for the war damage, whereas Americans were taking a case asking that Iran end its support to its proxies, such as Hezbollah, particularly in Iran. In Lebanon. So these were the 3 issues on which there was no agreement, but apparently on everything else, there seems to be. At least that's what Donald Trump keeps saying. In fact, today he says there's only one thing that is critical, which is the end of the nuclear program. And so he's not even talking about the Strait of Hormuz. But then subsequently, Donald Trump surprises everybody by blockading the Strait of Hormuz, especially after Iran opened the Strait of Hormuz under pressure from China and the Pakistanis during the ceasefire. So Iran opens the Strait of Hormuz, the prices of oil falls down, and then 2, 3 days later, Donald Trump blockades Iran and the Strait of Hormuz is once again closed. And in response, Iran then goes and also issues its blockade. Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand some of the things. So today he went on a tirade. I'm not going to read all his tweets. I'm just going to point to them just to give you an idea of how intensely he has been expressing. It's very clear that he's emotionally distraught. He's very upset and frustrated with the process because he's not getting what he wants. So this is one tweet of his in which he says Iran has decided to fire bullets yesterday in the Strait of Hormuz. This is Iran shooting at a couple of ships. Iran first fired at Indian ships, if you recall, and then subsequently it has fired. And Donald Trump says they are associated with France and Britain. But anyway, it forced them to turn around. And so that is Iran trying to control. And Donald Trump has been trying to threaten Iran subsequently. And then he talks about this that Israel never talked to me. So he's feeling pressure that everybody thinks here that his foreign policy is no more America first, his foreign policy is Israel first, and that I mean, everybody here knows that Donald Trump is basically like a puppet, and that Netanyahu is the puppet master who's making him dance to his tunes because of all the money that he has taken from billionaires who belong to the Israeli lobby. So he says, Israel never talked me into the war with Iran. The results of October 7 added to my lifelong opinion that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, which is kind of, I don't understand what October 7th has to do with nuclear weapons. October 7 was an operation by Hamas, and it is part of their struggle to become independent from Israel. Yes, it was a brutal, horrible terrorist attack, but it has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. So apparently, a bunch of terrorists attacking Israel, uh, terrorists who are part of the land that Israel occupies, and Donald Trump says that confirmed his resolve. No, that's why the Israeli lobby is so aggressively trying to get you to fight their wars with Iran. So there's a lack of profound incoherence in Donald Trump's rantings, I should say. And then he comes out with this: the deal that we are making with Iran will be far better than JCPOA. What deal? There seems to be no negotiations going on. The Iranians are very clear that they have not agreed upon anything. And they are saying very clearly that Donald Trump is lying about all of these so-called deals that has making. And then he says that Obama gave $1.7 billion in green cash to Iran. That is a lie. And it is such a pity that none of the Republicans who know what the truth is. Sometime in the 1970s, the Iranians bought weapons from the United States for about $400 million. And after the Islamic Revolution, the United States basically froze that money and kept the Iranians' money and did not return to them. And so there was Iranians went to the International Court of Arbitration, I think, and over a period of time there was a possibility that the court's decision would go against the United States, and the Iranians would get billions and billions of dollars. So in order to prevent giving Iran billions of dollars by losing the case, the Obama administration, I think, did a very good job of negotiating with Iran and coming up with a settlement that was just $1.7 billion. So that money was because the US owed its total money that the Iranians gave, plus interest, plus settlement. And because of the sanctions, there was no way of transferring money to Iran. They just transferred the cash. So if you look at what the president of Iran himself had to say about all of this, is fascinating. So the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, says, adherence to commitments is the logic that justifies any kind of dialogue. In addition to the deep historical distrust in Iran towards the background of the US government's behavior and performance, the non constructive and contradictory approach of US officials in recent days carries a bitter message. They seek Iran's surrender. The people of Iran will not bow to coercion. So this is something that the Iranians have been saying. Now we are not privy to any of these dialogue. They said that every time they were reaching a point of agreement while in the 21 hours that they were negotiating with JD Vance. Every time they were talking about it, the point of reaching an agreement, JD Vance would move the goal. He would get a phone call from either Netanyahu or he would call Trump, and then they would move the goalposts. So the U.S. position apparently was becoming harder and more demanding and more demanding. So that's what the Iranians say. The Pakistanis, unlike the Omanis, have not shared with us anything that is critical of either of the two sides. They seem to be only promoting and being optimistic and being basically good mediators, and they're good at arranging these kind of things. It seems that since morning today, they have basically closed down that section of Islamabad where there is the Serena Hotel. I think there are some limits also they have imposed on the internet in that region. So the security is very, very high. We really don't know if JD Vance is there or not. There are contradictory reports coming out that JD Vance is on his way, at least Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff is on his way. So what the flight from Iran is just 3 hours. So even at noon tomorrow, the Iranians said, okay, we will sit down so they can be in Islamabad by 3 p.m., 4 p.m. But the Americans, it takes them 17 hours. So they have to already be there for a dialogue to happen tomorrow. But I think that the Iranians want at least the United States to lift the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, otherwise, they will not talk. Uh, the United States has not only imposed a blockade, but they actually seized one of the ships of Iran's, which was heading to China. So they had helicopters and they had U.S. soldiers dropping onto the ship, and I think the engine room was blown up. So there are lots of things that have happened, which has made Iranians very upset and distrustful of the United States. They must be thinking if this is what the U.S. is going to do during ceasefire, they're going to seize our ships during ceasefire, then imagine that they can turn any time around. So, for example, the United States could make 25 different promises to Iran and say, that, okay, hand over your nuclear enriched, whatever Donald Trump calls it, nuclear dust. And once the Iranians hand that over, Donald Trump can then turn around and say, nah, 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 I'm reversing everything. I was just joking. I don't mean to keep any of my promises. So what will the Iranians do? Nothing. So the Iranians are very unsure about how to deal with Donald Trump and actually how to make Donald Trump. And for them, it's not just Donald Trump, it's the United States. They negotiated in good faith with the United States, reached an agreement in 2015, and they signed the agreement, JCPOA, not just with the US, but it was P5 uh, plus one, which Germany and the five Security Council permanent members of the UN Security Council. So they made agreements with all of those six countries, and so they did their job. And remarkably, the Iranians were fulfilling their end of the obligation. So when Donald Trump in 2017 or 20, whenever he decided to withdraw from the JCPOA, the US intelligence agency's assessment was that Iran was fulfilling its commitments and adhering to the agreement. But it was the United States which broke the agreement. So for them, they need a guarantee that the next president who comes in does not decide change course. It's like the Iranians saying, okay, we will not make nuclear weapons, we will not enrich uranium, please lift all sanctions. And then once all sanctions have been lifted legally, especially the UN resolutions and UN sanctions, then Iran then goes back to enriching, and then it might be impossible for the US to get a UN sanctioned sanctions again in place because the Chinese and the Russians will not cooperate. Even the Europeans right now are in no mood to cooperate with the United States. The US might get 4 vetoes in the UN Security Council meeting. So this has become so uncertain primarily because of Donald Trump's um, tendency not to adhere to the promises he makes and then to be so erratic. He thinks it's clever. He thinks what he's doing is clever. And this is the art of the deal. But he hasn't got a deal. I want to just share with you this interview that he's been having. He had with PBS. This is the latest thing that we have from him besides his Truth Social post. So he was asked this question from PBS: what happens if the ceasefire expires tomorrow evening? Then Trump says, then lots of bombs start going off. Is Iran still participating in the talks that will be happening in Islamabad? Will they still be there? He says, I don't know. I mean, they are supposed to be there. We agreed to be there, although they say we didn't. But no, it was set up, and we'll see whether or not it's there. If they're not there, that's fine too. My God, just try. He's like a little child, unable to even construct proper sentences. What do you want from the negotiating team in Islamabad? No nuclear weapons. Very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Very simple. Iran does not have a nuclear weapon and is very, very far from that. Uh, and the Iranians have agreed to that already. It's the enrichment part that is the problem. And so then the questions become about Jared Kushner's role, who has no official title, yet he's negotiating some. This is some of the most bizarre third world banana republic style thing. Oh, I'm going to send you my son-in-law. I'm going to send you my younger brother to make the deal. This is a sophisticated democracy with professional bureaucracies, congressional, confirmed leaders. So he does not send Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, but he sends his son in law, who has absolutely no official standing in the United States, to negotiate perhaps one of the most important issues, a deal that the US might make if it does make a deal. So it is absolutely bizarre. I mean, these things we would have laughed about it. These are the things that happen in the so-called banana republics, and not in the world's most sophisticated superpower. But this is where we are today. So Donald Trump has been tweeting all day long. This is one of his tweets. The Iranian leadership has forced hundreds of ships towards the United States, mostly Texas, Louisiana, and Alaska, to get their oil. Thank you very much. So he thinks that blockading Iran has become is actually beneficial to the U.S. because other countries are now turning to the United States to supply oil to them, because the Saudi, Iraqi, Kuwaiti, Iranian, UAE, Bahraini oil is not available to them. So he's thinking, well, why not? Let's make some money. And there's one more. This is, of course, Pezeshkian's response. It's amazing how few tweets you can see from either Abbas Araghchi or the president of Iran. But Donald Trump continues, like he's fighting so many battles all the time. He's fighting the Democrats. He's fighting the perception in the media that he's controlled by the Israelis. He's also resisting this notion that the Democrats have said that, okay, you said this will be over in 6 weeks. 6 weeks would be 42 days. We are way past 50 days now. And so we are into the seventh week. The war is not over. And by his own admission, the war begins tomorrow again, because the Iranians are not coming unless Donald Trump does two or three things. And those two or three things, let me lay them out to you. So one, Donald Trump says, okay, I will make a concession to you. I will end the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. You also open the Strait of Hormuz. And so then we can talk. So he can maybe postpone the talks to a couple of days while these two things happen. They say, okay, let's maintain the Strait of Hormuz open for, say, 48 hours, and then they talk about it. Or Donald Trump could say that let's extend the ceasefire for one more week or 2 more weeks, etc. I was on a show, a prominent show in India, and one of an Indian Brit, an Indian journalist who lives in Britain, he made a very interesting point. He said it is quite possible that Donald Trump might extend the ceasefire by 1 month or more, because Donald Trump is going to China in the middle of May. The dates at the moment are 14th and 15th of May. So if Donald Trump is going to go to China, he doesn't want this war to be ongoing. So because this war, if it is not settled, will overshadow the negotiations they are having with Iran. And imagine Donald Trump has blockaded the Iranian ships, which are all destined to go to China for 5 weeks when he shows up there in May, or at least 4 weeks. I don't think Xi Jinping will be in a good mood. So Donald Trump needs to have the Strait of Hormuz open when he's in Beijing, so they can talk about other important things such as rare earth minerals, China's production, tariffs, trade, etc., and Taiwan, relations with Japan. So there are many issues that the United States has to agree. Donald Trump is looking perhaps to make a grand bargain with China. But all of that could get overshadowed if this war is still going on and the United States is bombing Iran. Let me tell you this much. If the United States resumes bombing the way Donald Trump is saying, they will all be war crimes. If the US starts bombing power plants, civilian infrastructure, just to punish the Iranian people for not succumbing and surrendering to him, those are the very definition of war crimes. Of course, Donald Trump doesn't care about international law, and neither do his supporters. I mean, his supporters are just nuts. Sean Hannity just gave up his religion. He's a Catholic, and he says, I'm no more a Catholic as of today. I'm a Trumpian, I guess. That's the new religion of some people on the right in this country. So, so for them, there are no values except Donald Trump. So if he commits, and like he has committed war crimes, there should have been a hearing in the United States by now on what happened with the school. And I don't mean a congressional hearing run by sycophantic Republicans and a lot of Democrats who are also quite sycophantic, because this is ultimately Israel's war. You know, Democrats love to say that our support for Israel is ironclad, which means no matter what Israel does, whether it commits a genocide or starts an illegal war, does not matter. We will support Israel no matter what. So there are such Democrats like Schumer and others. So if the war starts, there will be war crimes, and the Chinese will hammer that. So when he goes to Beijing and he tries to lecture the Chinese, don't threaten Taiwan, and Xi Jinping is going to laugh in his face and will say, what the heck are you talking about? You have absolutely no foot to stand on, no place to stand on when it comes to international law or international norms. You're committing war crimes as we talk. And I'm sure that Donald Trump, in spite of his dumbass administration, his administration is absolutely nuts. Kash Patel apparently has become a drunk. He's drunk in his office. He's a failure. And they just fired another person, an assistant secretary, I think, of commerce or someone who was also having an appalling behavior. People are being fired left, right, and center. The Secretary for Homeland Security was fired. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has been fired. Even Trump is beginning to recognize that his administration is full of incompetent people. So he's not going to be able to go out there and out negotiate Xi Jinping unless they have all their ducks in a row. And so I think that is why there's a perception that there might be an extension of the ceasefire. But like I said, Donald Trump doesn't listen to his generals. He doesn't listen to his own intelligence people. So it depends on what Netanyahu tells him. Whatever Netanyahu tells him, he's going to do it tomorrow. Netanyahu wants a continuation of a war endlessly with Iran. Then he will get it, because the Iranians are not willing to play ball either. There is now an emergingly a kind of civil disagreement inside Iran. You can clearly see that the moderates are getting pushed back by the more hardcore people from IRGC. The new Ayatollah Khamenei, Ayatollah Mustafa Khamenei's supporters, and the appointments that have been made since the leadership was decapitated by Israel and the US, has the more hardcore people have taken over. They do not trust the United States. They hate the United States and they want to punish the United States and all those countries who have supported the US in their war. So tomorrow, if Iran is bombed by the US, you can bet Iran is going to fire missiles and drones at Israel and at UAE for sure. I can bet on that. And maybe even Kuwait and maybe even Bahrain. They may not fire on Qatar and the Saudis initially, but if the US starts damaging many resources inside Iran, like if they hit oil fields or refineries or pipelines inside Iran, then I think the Iranians will go berserk and start hitting all oil refinery across the board, regardless of which country it is. So it is quite possible that tomorrow, when I do this show, it'll be a much more sober discussion. I'm hoping for a more optimistic discussion. I am hoping that Donald Trump either extends the ceasefire uh, or he essentially lifts the blockade and calls on Iran to lift its blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. I also think that Donald Trump could simply just leave things as they are at the moment. But like he says, ships are now going towards Alaska and Texas to buy American oil. Uh, so, what if he does nothing? Like he does not escalate militarily, and he claims that Iran is losing $500 million a day, which is rubbish. Iran's total revenues from oil exports are less than, I don't know, less than 100 or so $1 million, $1 billion. And so there's no way that they are losing $500 million a day because Hormuz is blocked. But yes, they are losing some money because they're not able to send oil to China. So that is where we are. Uh, I mean, this utter chaos, I blame Donald Trump's confusion and his back and forth, and it's like a whiplash. It's like watching a tennis match by sitting in the front row. This is how you would be going because he keeps changing his position constantly, and so generating a distrust. And then there's also these rumors that people close to the administration are playing the stock market and short selling and trying to make money of Donald Trump's tweets. So eventually, when the Democrats come to power, they may investigate this because this Department of Justice is just a servant. I mean, the independence of many federal agencies has been compromised under the Trump administration. They all seem to be just servants of Donald Trump. Pam Boundy's job was to go after Donald Trump's enemies, not keep the country safe. Kash Patel, FBI, that is his job to investigate Donald Trump's political enemies, not spend time fighting crime. So, so who is going to investigate whether the president or his family members or his friends have been playing the stock market through insider trading, getting, like, for example, if you know for sure that tomorrow Donald Trump is going to extend the ceasefire, right? Then you know that the price of oil is going to go down significantly. It's at 95 right now. So you can short sell oil right now if you knew for sure that he's going to extend the ceasefire tomorrow. But if you know for sure that he's going to start bombing Iran, then you know the price of oil is going to go up. So, so people, so there is this perception that there are people who have done that, and there have been some big amounts and big bets taken on the stock market just 20 minutes before Donald Trump made a big announcement. So anyway, that's where we are. So thank you for watching Conversation. There's something else I want to share with those who are members of Conversations. I have scheduled a meeting on Sunday. We will have a Sunday meeting. Let me see if I can pull up the announcement. Here it is. We will have a Zoom meeting for those who are members of Conversations. It will be on April 25th, which is a Sunday at 8 p.m. India time, 7:30 p.m. Pakistan time, and 10:30 a.m. New York time. So if you are in any other place other than these three, where a lot of members do come from, then please check your time. So basically 10:30 a.m. New York time on Sunday, I will be having a Zoom meeting with all the members only. We will talk about my trip to Italy, my long dialogue and interview with the Vatican. I gave three lectures there. I will talk about those. One was a big public lecture on the war of Iran and US foreign policy with scholars from different parts of the world. There were African scholars, Latin American scholars, European diplomats, and a lot of students in the audience. So I will talk about that. I will also talk a little bit about my visit to Palermo in Sicily, and then I will answer whatever questions. People ask all sorts of questions about coming to and studying in America, about artificial intelligence, about diplomacy, etc. So whatever questions you have, we will talk about it, maybe an hour or more. Sometimes the last meeting went to for 2 hours, which was on March 8th. So please, and what I'm going to do is tomorrow or day after tomorrow, I will have a members only announcement on the community posts. So when you go to any YouTube channel, you can see it says videos, etc., and posts. So click post. That's where you will find a members only. So if you are a member, then you can click that and you will get the Zoom link. If you're not a member, you can become a member. It's not very expensive. Just go there. If you see this announcement in the post, I have a link to all you can do is go to the channel where it says join. You can join the channel and become a member. So, anyway, thank you for watching Conversations. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this with your socio-political network. There are a couple of comments here. Let me address those. Manish Chowdhury, good morning to you too. Kush Singh says, will Trump have to fight court cases after his term is over, or the judiciary will bow down to Trump? Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think all his political decisions, all the decisions that he's making as president of the United States are now exempt from scrutiny because the Supreme Court have already made that judgment that he can't be held accountable. So he enjoys executive privilege. But that doesn't mean that his Jared Kushner and his family members enjoy that. They don't. Especially Jared Kushner is getting involved in this. If we know there is a clear conflict of interest, the Qataris and the Saudis have invested literally billions of dollars in his equity funds. And so, if there is some perception that his position was compromised, yes, there can be an investigation if there's indications of uh, representatives or friends or family playing the stock market. There can be other many forms. Even the Republicans now concede that this is perhaps the most corrupt, literally the most corrupt administration the United States has ever had. Donald Trump's, I mean, this is supposed to be the Christian president, fully enjoying the support of Christianity and evangelicals. It is astonishing as to how much willingness they have to accept the criminality of this administration. Is stunning. It's absolutely stunning. So thank you very much for watching Conversations. Uh, and please become a member of the channel, support it, and we will see you soon. Azhar Bashir, well, well, they are being eroded steadily. Azhar Bashir says, where is the deep-rooted democratic value? Well, it is. For example, you can see me making this. I'm sitting here 10 miles away from 9 miles away from Biden's house and exactly 100 miles from the White House. I'm able to speak so critically. I'm calling this administration the most criminal administration in American history. And I feel that I still have the freedom to say this in the United States. Do you think that you can say this about Asim Muniri in sitting in Pakistan? Many channels have been shut down for saying things critical of Modi. My main channel has been blocked in India. My ex has been blocked in India because I was critical of Modi. Try this in Saudi Arabia, they will probably hang you. So, yes, there is freedom of speech still, even in Donald Trump's. Look at the night shows. Yes, they tried to shut down Stephen Colbert, but still, people are making fun of Donald Trump. So there is a lot of criticism going on, even on YouTube channels in the US. So there is the democracy, the way it is being compromised is more through money. So we are gradually moving towards oligarchy because of one particular Supreme Court decision called Citizens United. And that has really, really undermined, it has completely destroyed America's democratic structure. And then we now have a very popular president and spineless congressman. So the magic of US Constitution of checks and balances does not seem to work because the Congress is not fulfilling its obligation because of this whole gerrymandering. Donald Trump can threaten to primary any congressman or senator who opposes him from his own party, and therefore the Congress is unable to perform its constitutional job of checking. Like, for example, the Congress should not have allowed Donald Trump to go to war like this without approval. They should have cut off his money rather than that they are giving him money. And then they are also uh, and and so yes, there is a decline in American institutions, but it's still pretty robust. If you notice, the Supreme Court threw Donald Trump's main foreign policy of tariffs, and it's over. Donald Trump doesn't talk about tariffs. It is because the Supreme Court, which is dominated by conservatives and Republicans, has still played its constitutional role. I was very impressed with that decision of the Supreme Court. On many cases, students who were arrested by and were being threatened to be deported, the courts in America let them go free. The Turkish student from Tufts, she was allowed to go free. The Indian student from Georgetown University was arrested. Again, the courts let them go. So yes, there is some independence in the American court system still working. Anyway, Azhar Bashir, I just wanted to let you know, thank you for being a member. We have a Sunday meeting. You can see this Zoom meeting. And don't forget to check in a day or two for the link to the Zoom meeting. And we will have it on Sunday, 10:30 a.m. my time. So look forward to seeing all of you. And if there are no more questions, no more comments, I will say good night to all of you. Take care.